Hi, Kevin here. Well, we're going to perform an experiment today. I found this Schar brand gluten-free puff pastry at my local farm store, and I want to know if it works out as well as Pepperidge Farm puff pastry does. So I'm going to make some strawberry turnovers with each type of pastry, and then we will compare the two. Yeah, so there are two rolls of puff pastry in the Schar package. And as I can see, there's some tape here. Pull that off. And then going to unroll it on a parchment-lined baking sheet. And by the way, I've preheated my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Well, it seems to be about the same size as the Pepperidge Farm puff pastry. Okay. Then I'm going to cut this into 4 quarters. And then going to paint the edges with some egg wash. This is just 1 egg blended with about a teaspoon of water. And I'm just painting the edge, just a border around each pastry square. This way the pastry ought to hold its seam after I fold it around the strawberry filling. Not doing a very neat job here. Actually, can you even see? Let me move you in a little closer. Yeah, sometimes when you make turnovers, if you don't seal the edge, or rather if you don't apply water or egg wash to the borders, the seal doesn't hold and then you get fruit filling all over the place. So for the fruit filling, I'm using strawberry pie filling, which came from a can. And there's really nothing bad about this filling. I was surprised the ingredients are not terrible. And then let me grab a spoon. And I'm going to place, roughly a ½ teaspoon of the filling on each pastry. You never want to overfill turnovers, no matter what kind of pastry you're using, because then they can explode. Just a little more here. Alright. Then I'm going to fold corner to corner. Press. And I forgot to tell you that with this Schar puff pastry, it comes frozen and you have to let it thaw for 3 hours. Pepperidge Farm only asks you to thaw it for 40 minutes. So you really have to plan in advance, I guess, if you're going to use this gluten-free pastry. And I'm hoping that this pastry works out because my spouse avoids gluten. And if I can find a good gluten-free puff pastry, well, he'll be able to eat turnovers and pot pie and other things that one generally uses puff pastry for. Let me grab a fork. And then I'm just going to mash the edge to make a really good seal here. Okay. And then To encourage the pastry to brown, I'm going to apply the egg wash to the top. I really hope these puff up. And I'm going to make, let's see, I'll use a knife. I'm going to make a little slit in the middle just to allow steam to escape. Just like a 1-inch slit. Okay, these are going into the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. I want them to brown and puff. And again, let's keep our fingers crossed that they do puff. And by the way, I have made my own puff pastry from all-purpose flour and butter. And boy, was that delicious. But it was also really involved. It took hours to prepare, and I ended up with flour on the floor, on my counter, in my hair. What a mess. But again, truly delicious. But it's so much work that that's why I tend to buy puff pastry. Okay, now I'm going to prepare the same turnovers using the Pepperidge Farm puff pastry dough. And I will be making a glaze for these, just a very simple glaze. All right, and then these will go into the oven as soon as the gluten-free pastries are done. All right, let's go ahead and make the glaze. So what I have here is a 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar. And to the sugar, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. Also going to add 1 tablespoon of cold water. And just give it a whisk. There, we're done. All right, here are the Schär gluten-free pastries. And as you can see, the seam held mostly. Had some leakage over here, not sure why. And the tops did brown respectively, and they certainly did puff up. Maybe not as much as the Pepperidge Farm pastries puff, but again, it's a decent amount of puff. Okay, I'm going to glaze these very quickly while they are warm. Drizzle a little on each one. This should be enough glaze for 8 pastries. Oh, they look good. Right. Here are the Pepperidge Farm puff pastry turnovers. And boy, they puffed far more dramatically than the Schar gluten-free pastries did. Let's do a side-by-side comparison. All right, here's the Pepperidge Farm turnover, and here is the Schar gluten-free turnover. As you can see, the Pepperidge Farm puff pastry really puffed. The other puffed, but then it collapsed considerably, but it did not collapse too badly. So now we can have a taste. Okay, first, the Schar gluten-free turnover. Little taste. Okay. It's a little bit soggy. Still tastes good. But it doesn't have, sorry about that, it doesn't have the layers that puff pastry is supposed to have. Still, it isn't bad. Now here comes the Pepperidge Farm baby. Oh man. Can you hear that crunch? This is really good. You can you fix this so you can see, pull you out. Lots of layers in here. Probably, I don't know, 100 layers. Really good. The gluten-free Schar pastry did not offer any crunch whatsoever. I wouldn't call it soggy, but it's not crisp, and it doesn't have many layers. It has a few layers, but not enough to write home about. Pepperidge Farm, well, if you've ever tried it, you know how it works, and it always works really well. So, in conclusion, I think that the Schar puff pastry is not great, but it is good enough for people who are on gluten-free diets, as my spouse is. And I wouldn't hesitate to use it to top a pot pie, or to make pinwheels, or turnovers, or what was the other thing I was thinking of? Oh yes, pigs in a blanket. It doesn't puff quite as much, well, it doesn't puff even half as much as Pepperidge Farm puff pastry does, but that's okay. It's a gluten-free product. So anyway, I just wanted to do this quick test in case you ever encounter Schar gluten-free puff pastry and want to know how it works. All right, and I'll see you soon with a real recipe. Okay, bye for now.